Muhammad Hadi, the Deputy Special Coordinator for the Middle East Peace Process, recently visited Gaza City, where he met with representatives from non-governmental organizations (NGOs) and delivered a poignant appeal for an immediate ceasefire. This high-level visit highlighted the dire humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip, especially in light of the ongoing conflict. Throughout his visit, Hadi made it clear that the continued suffering of civilians, particularly displaced children, could only be alleviated through a prompt cessation of hostilities. Hadi's visit to Gaza. During his trip to Gaza, Hadi engaged with various local and international organizations that are on the ground, providing essential aid and services to those impacted by the ongoing violence. He took the opportunity to better understand the severity of the humanitarian crisis, which has displaced thousands and left many without basic necessities such as food, water, and medical care. Meeting with GO representatives allowed him to gain first-hand insight into the challenges these organizations face in trying to deliver assistance to the affected populations. In addition to his meetings with NGOs, Hadi also visited the Holy Family Church in Gaza City, a site that has become a symbol of both religious and humanitarian solidarity in the region. The church has served as a refuge for many displaced individuals, particularly children, who have been caught in the crossfire of the conflict. Hadi's visit to the church underscored his recognition of the importance of religious and cultural institutions as sanctuaries for those seeking safety and security in the midst of war. A message for ceasefire. At the church, Hadi recorded a video message, delivering a powerful and emotional appeal for an immediate ceasefire. Surrounded by displaced children, many of whom were sitting on the church steps, he expressed his deep concern for their well-being and future. Needless to say, churches, mosques, civilians, and all civilian infrastructure must be protected, Hadi stated in his message. They can only be protected by the end of this war, by a ceasefire. His words were a direct call to all parties involved in the conflict to prioritize the safety of civilians, particularly the most vulnerable, including children, women, and the elderly. The images accompanying Hadi's message painted a vivid picture of the human cost of the war, with young children, displaced from their homes, looking on in a state of uncertainty and fear. For Hadi, these children represented the future of Gaza, and their suffering was emblematic of the broader consequences of the ongoing hostilities. The need for an end to the violence was not only a moral imperative but also a practical necessity for the long-term stability of the region. The plight of Gaza's displaced youth. Hadi's visit to Gaza brought to light the plight of the displaced youth, many of whom are unable to return to their homes due to the ongoing conflict. Gaza's young population, already living in challenging conditions, has borne the brunt of the war's devastation. The displacement of families has created a generational crisis, with many children now facing the prospect of growing up without the fundamental elements required for a thriving future, namely, education, healthcare, and stable living conditions. Speaking directly to the children who had gathered at the Holy Family Church, Hadi highlighted the urgency of their situation. Gaza's displaced youth deserve to go back to their homes, he said. These children are the hope of the future, and without education, without proper health care, there will be no bright future. His statement underscored the importance of providing these children with the tools they need to rebuild their lives and contribute to a peaceful and prosperous future for Gaza and the wider Middle East region. The war in Gaza has disrupted the education of countless children, leaving them without access to schools or proper learning resources. Furthermore, the destruction of healthcare facilities has made it increasingly difficult for children to receive the medical attention they need, further exacerbating the challenges they face. In this context, Hadi's call for an end to the war was not only a plea for immediate relief but also a reminder of the long-term consequences of failing to address the root causes of the conflict. A call for a better future. As Hadi stood on the steps of the Holy Family Church, surrounded by displaced children, his appeal for a ceasefire was framed not just as a humanitarian request, but as a call for a better future for all. Again, I am here appealing from this church in Gaza to end this war, for the sake of these children, for the sake of the future, but also for the sake of a better future for all of us in this region, Hadi stated. His words resonated with a wider audience, calling attention to the interconnectedness of the challenges facing the Middle East. The future of Gaza's children is inextricably linked to the broader stability of the region, and any hope for lasting peace in the Middle East requires the protection of civilians, the cessation of hostilities, and a commitment to addressing the underlying political, social, and economic issues that fuel the conflict. Hadi's call for an end to the war reflects the broader international community's growing concern over the humanitarian impact of the conflict. Over the past several months, various humanitarian organizations and governments have called for a ceasefire, arguing that it is the only viable way to protect civilians and provide them with the assistance they desperately need. Hadi's visit to Gaza was a timely reminder of the importance of diplomacy, humanitarian aid, and international cooperation in addressing the crisis. The international response. The international community has responded to the situation in Gaza with a mixture of humanitarian aid, diplomatic pressure, and calls for a ceasefire. United Nations agencies, including the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs (OCHA), have been working tirelessly to provide aid to the people of Gaza, delivering food, water, medical supplies, and other essential goods. However, the challenges of reaching those in need have been compounded by the ongoing fighting, the destruction of infrastructure, and the blockade on Gaza. Governments around the world, including the United States, the European Union, and various Arab states, have expressed their concerns over the humanitarian situation and called for a ceasefire. Some nations have also called for the resumption of peace talks between the Israeli and Palestinian authorities, stressing the need for a long-term political solution to the conflict. Despite these efforts, the path to peace remains uncertain, with both sides continuing to hold firm to their positions. In this context, Hadi's role as the Deputy Special Coordinator for the Middle East peace process is crucial. As a senior official within the United Nations, Hadi has been involved in efforts to mediate between the various parties and push for a ceasefire. His visit to Gaza was a clear demonstration of the UN's commitment to addressing the humanitarian crisis and working towards a peaceful resolution of the conflict. However, as Hadi himself pointed out, the road to peace requires not only diplomatic engagement but also the willingness of all parties to put the needs of civilians first. The need for protection of civilian infrastructure. One of the key messages delivered by Hadi during his visit to Gaza was the need for the protection of civilian infrastructure. In his video message from the Holy Family Church, he emphasized the importance of safeguarding not only religious institutions like churches and mosques but also civilian infrastructure, such as schools, hospitals, and homes. The ongoing destruction of civilian infrastructure has had a devastating impact on the people of Gaza, making it increasingly difficult for them to access basic services and rebuild their lives. The destruction of healthcare facilities, for example, has left many people without access to life-saving medical treatment. Hospitals and clinics in Gaza have been overwhelmed with patients, many of whom have suffered injuries from the conflict. The lack of medical supplies, coupled with the damage to healthcare infrastructure, has exacerbated the suffering of the population. Similarly, the destruction of schools has interrupted the education of thousands of children, many of whom have been forced to flee their homes. Without education, these children face a bleak future, deprived of the opportunity to build a better life for themselves and their families. Hadi's call for the protection of civilian infrastructure is a reminder of the importance of preserving the basic institutions that are essential for the survival and well-being of any society. Whether it is schools, hospitals, or religious buildings, these institutions provide the foundation for rebuilding a society after conflict. Without them, the prospects for peace and stability in Gaza, and in the broader Middle East, remain uncertain. Conclusion: the urgent need for peace. Muhammad Hadi's visit to Gaza was a powerful reminder of the human cost of the ongoing conflict and the urgent need for a ceasefire. Surrounded by displaced children at the Holy Family Church, Hadi made an emotional plea for an end to the war, emphasizing the importance of protecting civilians and civilian infrastructure. His message was clear: the future of Gaza's children, and indeed the future of the region, depends on the cessation of hostilities and the provision of basic services such as education and healthcare. As the international community continues to respond to the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, it is crucial that all parties work together to find a lasting solution to the conflict. While a ceasefire is a necessary first step, it must be followed by a commitment to addressing the underlying issues that have fueled the conflict for decades. Only through diplomacy, cooperation, and a genuine commitment to peace can the region hope to secure a better future for its children and its people. The plight of Gaza's displaced youth serves as a stark reminder of the need for immediate action to end the violence and begin the process of rebuilding. Hadi's call for a ceasefire is not just a humanitarian plea, it is a call for a better future for the entire region. The time to act is now.